What's up guys, we're gonna rank 21 IEMs today and let's just get into it. Starting with the Oracle Mark IIIs. These are pretty good endgame worthy IEMs. They're very balanced, very clean, and overall doesn't stick out in any region, doesn't specialize in any region, right? You're not gonna get any special sauce in the bass, in the vocals, or the treble, but it's overall very smooth. It's slightly airy and the vocals are enough. Overall, just a well-balanced IEM. And it's a pretty good upgrade over the Mark IIs in terms of like the bass texture as well as the overall timbre, because the Mark IIs are just way too bright. So if you're looking for like an all-rounder that's good technically wise as well, these would be a good pick. Next is the Mega 5 7th edition. You guys have been asking for this. These are a great set of IEMs. They're similar to the Oracle Mark IIIs. They're both like a clean, balanced sound, with the main difference being that the Oracle Mark IIIs just has better bass texture in general. It has an extra DD, it has the setup. There's also a little bit more low end just to the overall sound. It's more engaging, and it's just a better version of the Mega 5 7s in my opinion. Like when I heard the Mega 5, it was a little bit too laid back, too boring for me. It was a little bit too monitor like, so I didn't find it like too engaging with the music. It could be endgame worthy for people who like that cleaner and more monitor like sound, because it is less color than even the Oracle Mark IIIs. So if that's you, you might put it in endgame worthy, but for me, I'm gonna say it's great, but not really endgame worthy because it does lack that engagement to the low end. Now the 7Hz 5, okay, I'm gonna put it, it's okay, it's an okay IEM. It's a V-shape IEM. It's not very unique in the V-shape sound as well. It's just a lot of bass, a lot of treble. It's your typical V-shaped sound, but it does have more detail and bass texture than your like cheaper V-shaped sounds. So if you want like, you know, if you like V-shape and you want to upgrade to your whatever V-shape you have, these would be a good option. But the timbre is a bit off in the vocals, and overall it doesn't scale very well because it's just way too boosted. And there's just too much mid-bass for me personally. It's just the vocals sound too husky, a little bit buried. But if you do want a V-shape exciting sound, these are okay. Next is the TRUTHEAR gate. This is just another okay IEM. It's a beginner set. It graphs very similar to the original WANER. Like if you look at the graph, it's pretty similar. Slight differences in the treble, but not that big of a difference overall. I think I still prefer the original WANER. It's just a little bit smoother in the treble, but you know, you can't really go wrong with it. It's like under 20 bucks, right? And it's just a good beginner set. Don't expect too much. Now the TANGZU SG edition, I like these better than the gates because it is a little bit cleaner, and overall it's not as like peaky in the treble if you look at the graph, and overall it's a little less bass and a little bit cleaner. It's not that much different from the WANER. It's another budget set, and if you want something cleaner, even like more than the WANERs, a little bit even more neutral than the WANERs, then you could go for the SG edition. These are another good, you know, budget set. Now the EM10 on the other hand is a great IEM. I think is, you know, it's debatable if it's better than the Mega 5 7. I think overall the Mega 5 might be a little bit better in the layering and just overall technicalities, whereas the EM10 is more engaging. It has more air, it has more treble, and it also has a lot more mid bass. It has like more wrap around your head kind of sound, whereas the Mega 5 7 is kind of like laid back and very spacious kind of sound. So depending on which one you like, you know, you could go for the 5 or the EM10. Actually, don't go for the 5, go for the Oracles or go for the EM10. Now the TANCHJIM for you is a pretty good set depending on the switch. If you go for the, you know, the middle end switch, you get more bass. It's more like a warm kind of sound. It's pretty good for rock and middle if you use like the middle switch. And then down up, it just lowers the switch, like the bass amount. And you know, if you want something more neutral or like you don't want that much bass, I think the down switch does have too much sub bass roll off, but if you want something like warmer and not as sub bass like oriented, then the up switch is pretty good. And overall it's just a decent IEM, but you do have to watch out for like the 15k peak. It does come out across a little bit short on certain songs. I wouldn't say it's as good as the EA 500 LM in terms of like technicalities and stuff like that, but it's pretty good for like 60-70 bucks. The build quality is very good. It's like metal, and overall pretty good IEM. As for KINERA's Abyss, these are in a starter set, so I would say it's an okay IEM. I would probably put it behind the gate and the Studio SG because it is like a warmer version of the WANER, of the original WANER. And overall, I think if you want something clean, the gate and both the studio version would be better. But if you want something warmer, these would work as well. I think I like these over the HOLAs. Now the 61T, these, I would say these are good. The timbre is a bit off in the vocals, but overall, treble extension is pretty good. There's pretty decent amount of air in the treble. The bass texture, it's okay. I would say it's average, just like the 7Hz 5, but it's like not as bad in the timbre and better technicalities over the 7Hz 5. The timbre is a bit off in the vocals to me, but I mean, if you want like a more laid back presentation, these would be an okay choice. Next we have the 7Hz AERO, which is another budget set, and this is pretty much just the clinical 02s, just a little bit more bass than the 02s, a little bit more treble. Overall like a slight V-shaped sound, but very bassy IEM in general. The overall build quality is very poor, you could say, for like, I mean, it's 15 bucks, but even then it just feels very cheap. So because of that, and because of it's a very bassy set, the technicalities, the layering separation isn't as good as the cleaner sets. It's an okay IEM. It's not necessarily a pass. If you want something bassy, these are still okay because they're very cheap, right? But it is not as good as the other ones. Now, as for the Hydro is a pretty good IEM in my opinion. I like it more than the 620s. First of all, the upper mids and the vocals are just better. It comes out more clean. It's not as like recessed, and it's not as like muddy in the vocals. It also has more options depending on the switch. You have like a tamer bass version, which does emphasize the upper mids more. It can get a little bit sharp depending on the switch, but if you do like the up up down down switch, it sounds pretty good. It's like slight V-shaped sound. You can find them for $100. These are a pretty good option, but they are KZ. So now KINERA Relentless is I would say a slight V-shaped sound. I don't know where I would put these because the treble does get a little bit too much, but you also get that like treble like quote unquote special sauce in the air if you can handle it. I think it's okay for like a V-shaped sound. I think it's better than the 7Hz 5 in terms of the layering and the overall like the vocal presentation. The vocal timbre is much better. They are more engaging than the 4Us and better technicalities than the 4Us, but I don't know. You know what, I'm gonna put them ahead of the 620s. But versus the Hydro, I think the Hydro is still better as like a slight V-shape all-rounder because again, it just has less upper mids. It's less as shouty while you still get enough of the like the sub bass and the mid bass. So because of that, I'm gonna say the Hydro is slightly better than Relentless, and it's cheaper as well. Now, as for the Super Mix 4, these are great IEMs. If you look at the graph, they are pretty much Harman, right? And depending on your unit, they do sound better than the Nova. I know some of the Super Mix 4 are a little bit overly bright because of unit variations, but overall with Senkai tips, my unit at least, they sound very smooth and it's just very great value at $150. But yeah, they are much cleaner than the Hydro, and overall it is better than the Hydro. The Hydro is just a little bit slightly V-shaped, right? They're more engaging than the Super Mix 4. If you want more engagement, you would go for the Hydro. If you want just like a more balanced all-rounded sound, you would go for the Super Mix 4. It would be behind the EM10 because the EM10 is just like a better version of the Super Mix 4. So yeah, that's why it would be behind the EM10, but still pretty great. Alright, next we have the CITYPRO 5, and this is like a very low-key IEM, but it is very good for vocals under $100. It's very neutral in the bass, and the treble, you know, it's there, but it's not going to be very emphasized in the treble. But because of that, the vocals do pop out more. It can get a little bit sharp depending on the song, but overall, like at mid volume, it's very good as like a vocal set, especially for female vocals. It's a pretty unique set and a decent side grade to all these sub, you know, $100 IEMs. And overall, it's not going to be as technical or value wise good as the LM. The LMs are going to be better technicalities, the clarity is better, the extension on both ends is better on the LM, but this does like, it is pretty unique in that sense under $100. Now the LETSHUOER S08, these are pretty good IEMs. I like them more than the 620s. The tactility and like the amount of detail you hear in the bass is better on the S08. It's not as airy and well, like it's not as smooth as the 620s, but overall I think I do prefer a little bit more than the 620s, but I don't think it's as well rounded as the Relentless and the Hydro. It is like less fatiguing than both the Hydro and the Relentless, but overall I think as an all-rounder those two would still be better. Next we have the DYNABRID from ORIVETI. It's another good IEM. I would say it's around the same as the StarCityPro. Personally, I think I like the 4U better because the DYNABRID does have the peak at 2K and it does get a bit too much sometimes, as well as the combination of the peaks at 8K and 15K. At mid volume, this is, I think it's fine, but I do still think the Star City is a little bit more unique in the vocal presentation. And if you want something like less fatiguing, more warm and neutral, then you would go for the 4U. Next, we have the Pilgrim. This is a great IEM. I like this more than the Mega 5. If you're gonna do the clean sound, this is like the quote-unquote benchmark for clean sound at under $500. Now the vocals are a bit lacking in power, and overall, you know, it's a very clean and balanced sound. I heard some people say it's just a bit too thin. They want like a more fuller sound like the high 4s. So in that case, you would go for like the high 4s or something more well-rounded like the EM10. And the 15K peak, depending on your unit, this can get a bit much. Mine obviously has a pretty big peak, but overall it's just a pretty clean set. The technicalities are good. The bass texture is pretty good as well. And yeah, it's a great set. Next, we have the TINHIFI DUDU. Now, I don't know who came up with the name DUDU because literally sounds like poop, but yeah, I mean it's an okay IEM, I would say. It's kind of like the S12 but not as peaky in the upper mids and the treble. There's like less upper mids emphasis, and you know the air is around the same as the S12. It's more vocal emphasis than the S12, and overall, you know, it's just it's another okay set. It doesn't sound as, you know, planar like, but it is still planar. The bass is still planar, and I think it's a little bit better than, I don't know, it's kind of tied with the DYNABRIDs for me, so it does look cooler and the name is better, so I'm just gonna put the DYNABRID above the DUDU. But technicality wise, It's good. It's a planar. Can't really go wrong. But in terms of the tuning, there's much better tune and more unique IEMs. Next, we got the Full Explorer. Now, depending on your preference, this could be a okay IEM or a very great IEM. Now, since I like listening loud, this is a great IEM to me personally, because you crank this all the way up and it just kind of like wraps around you, super immersive, and like the treble doesn't get fatiguing, but you still get enough detail overall. But at mid volume, this is probably going to be, you know, like a pass for some people, because it is dark leaning. It's not, the vocals are kind of gone if you don't crank it up. If you crank it up, it goes to like good to great. I'm gonna put it at the top of good. And then we have the DUNU DAVINCI. Now this, I'm gonna say it's the top of good, because if you compare to the SIMGOT SuperMix 4, SuperMix 4 is just better as an all-rounder. It's cleaner, it's much better value-wise, the tech is better as well, and overall it's just like the better pick if you want something more all-rounded. But if you want something with like good bass, the DAVINCI is pretty good. The No Way, the slam is there, very good. But I just wish it was a little bit more like clear and sharper in the like the transients, the tactility, and stuff like that. But it's still pretty good IEM, and I would put it at the top of good. But speaking of good, the binary DYNAQUATTRO is probably the best set that I've heard so far that came out like around under 200 bucks. I think it's what the 620s should have been. The bass texture is better, the tactility, the resolution is better than the DUNU DAVINCI. The slam isn't as hard as the DAVINCI, but overall, if you want like a more balanced set, the vocals pop out more on the DYNAQUATTRO. The treble is a little bit better extended, more clean, more well balanced. But overall, I think it's just like a more balanced set versus the DAVINCI and the 620. And for most people, you would take these over the other ones. Now, as for the Titan S2, I think it's an okay IEM. The build quality is very good for the price. The cable is very good for the price, but it's kind of just like another Harman. It's like a warm leaning Harman. You do hear some peak in the 15k region as well. It's an okay IEM. I would say it's better than the 7Hz 5, because the 7Hz 5 is a little bit V-shaped and it does like get sharp and fatiguing and the timbre is a bit off. But overall, it's an okay IEM. I don't think the value is that good considering the competition. You know, you have the LM, you have the RDT10 and stuff like that. And lastly, we have the Splendor View 2, and these are a pretty good IEM actually. I'm gonna put them in the 610s, above 610s for now. It is like a slight V-shape. The mid bass, you get a good thump, and then you get a good enough extension in the upper mids and the treble without it sounding like overly sharp. You know, it's a pretty fun and an engaging IEM overall. There's nothing much like wrong with it. If the 610s, the bass texture is okay, the treble, the air extension is better, it's airier than the View 2, but the vocals are just a bit too warm, a bit too pushed back on the 620s, whereas the View is much like, I guess, quote unquote, all-rounded, slightly V-shaped, again, very engaging. But I think I would still take the S08 over the View. Sometimes the upper mids can get a bit much on the View, and the S08, you get enough of the mid bass, and you still get like a energetic sound for like half the price of the View. But yeah, aside from that, this looks pretty good actually. I don't think I need to change anything. I am going to compare my collab with some of the other IEMs in the next video. Like 81% of you guys asked for that, so I'm gonna do it. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Jeff Young, Rorax Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Disc Call Scaldist, B Urak, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Patrick, Bellcell Kel, Rosar the Kelf, Paulie J, Mr. Gorillas, Anto Risto, Gis Seng Young, Tamat Pafrache, Ed Dunlap, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Asher, and Ben Thompson. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I'll see everyone in the next one.